everybody. Welcome to The Banished Zone, the show about flesh and blood with Bryn.
And with Chris.
And we are so behind on stuff to talk about. It's so much stuff.
A lot has happened. Team, where are we and what are we doing?
Here's the truth, right? The truth is LSS dropped the best set that they've ever released, and we've been a little busy fucking playing it.
That is true. That's pretty accurate.
I mean, like, honestly, mostly what we've been doing. It's not like, I mean, okay, I got pretty busy with my job, and Chris also started kind of a new project that's been taking up a lot of his time.
That's true.
But literally, besides that, mostly what we've been doing is playing a shit ton of Outsiders.
Also Kraken. I feel like we've been doing more like box break content in the last couple of months than we have the whole channel.
This is not news, but the set is good.
It is good.
Folks,
set.
The set is good.
If you didn't know.
If you weren't aware, it's a great set.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what anything is. Everyone's having arguments. Everyone thinks that stuff is too broken.
Ban it immediately.
Actually, this hero sucks.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say
unplayable.
Or they just think someone's bad and it's like, yeah, Uzuri will never be winning anything. She's too weak.
Uzuri will never win. Riptide will never win. Azalea is unplayable, or is broken. Yeah. Actually, I should say.
They went from unplayable to broken instantly.
Lexi is too, but that's of course. So, it's been a whirlwind of things, but to be honest, like, a lot of the conversations that have been happening around Outsiders are sort of to be expected.
Yeah, totally.
And like I said on the stream, we did a box break yesterday, and
you can check it out at youtube.com/thebanished.
You're already subscribed, of course.
Right.
There's no chance you're not watching this on YouTube and not subscribed.
They could be a podcast listener, though, on their phone.
Right, but
maybe
you
they're driving.
That's very true.
So if you're driving, pull onto the highway, open up your laptop, log into YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Right.
Stop, pull over a gas station, be very safe.
Use McDonald's Wi-Fi to subscribe.
Yeah. Try not to drive as much as you can. I think that's my goal in life. Just generally don't drive. But I think, are you eating something?
She's trying to open the door.
Oh,
Kitty,
okay.
don't open that door.
Don't worry about that. My cat's trying to open a door.
For no reason. There's nothing back there.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube is what we're trying to say. If you... What was I trying to say? If you watch that, I was trying to say that there's a lot of... One of the big ones right now is pack collation.
Right. Yeah. This is a big hot topic, which
because
and also, there was God boxes too. Like it started as right. Like that was sort of the first wave of conversation about it as somebody opened a box. With like 30, 40 legendaries.
Yes, and then everyone immediately acted like the sky was falling because that means that, of course, that means that somebody fucked up big time, and somehow that means I am not going to get the legendaries I'm deserved because when I gamble, I deserve to win.
Yeah. And they're stealing them all from me.
Yeah, the people who got 20 or whatever in a case, they're stealing them from me. Of course, that's how card games. That's how manufacturing works. There's no. They make all of the legendaries that they're gonna make for the run, and then there's no more.
I'm imagining it like those like Kelly political cartoons from The Onion, where it's like the crying family, and it's like
the crying Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. It's like the family, and it's like good, honest TCG box buyers, and then there's like a greedy guy, and it's like evil God box tavers, and it's like, but they took all my legendaries. Then the little kid is like, Daddy, will I still be able to play in the Pro Tour or something? And the Statue of Liberty's crying. Yeah. That was definitely some people's reactions.
It's a very silly reaction to have to what was clearly, I think, from the beginning, a mild fuck up at the factory.
And like the kind of thing that's happened, I think there was an interesting conversation about this. I think Yenji Lee had one of the best takes about it, which was basically like, I think the way people are talking about this, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was saying like the way people are talking about it is sort of like a symptom of social media, where like people sort of expect everything to be perfect and then can spread around examples of imperfections like a lot, because I feel like there was a lot of people who were like reposting the same pictures and YouTubes of God boxes to the point where I feel like
and they were like, people were getting the impression that there was 10, 20 of them, and I think we've seen 2.
Yeah, I feel like it was like the same one was getting posted, or like pictures of like the miscut packs. It was like people kept seeing the same or similar pictures and being like, wow, happened again. And it's just
happening all over the place.
It's like already like if you don't, like the way
not,
Twitter works is that it'll like not show you things in like actual time.
All social media. I mean, it's like it's not something I'm immune to. Like I definitely,
no one is.
When you see something multiple times a day and everyone complaining about it, you're like, wow, this must be a huge problem. And it just isn't. I mean, and LSS was forced to come out and be like, look, for 18 minutes, a
maximum of 30, I think.
What do you call those things? The big sheets.
Yeah.
That legendary sheet got swapped with the rainbow foil sheet.
For like commons, right?
For rainbow foil commons. So, probably rares too, but they didn't explain.
Unclear.
In the Belgium. And so I don't know how many boxes are made in 18 minutes.
Yeah, I have no real frame of reference.
We don't know.
Yeah, because they
don't know.
They said 30 minutes is like the maximum amount of time it could have been, so it's like unclear exactly.
It doesn't affect the cold foils. And what's interesting is like they had to explain like that's not how it works. Like there's no set amount of legendaries. Like we just keep printing the sheets.
Right.
Like
yeah. It
like
just meant that
they changed it and then they continued the printing.
Right. It was not like the way people imagined it. Like I don't know. Like the other boxes were like get a legendary, and then I grabbed a common instead, so the box got no legendaries or whatever.
Right.
Seems very unlikely.
So I think a big thing that one thing that I've just been pretty fascinated about is just the fact that like everything feels nobody's choosing to learn from this because these kinds of things keep happening, and I think it's just maybe it's as a community keeps growing, there's going to be people who just love to complain.
Sure. Yeah. You were finding examples where you were just like quickly Googling and were like, oh, hey, this happened to Magic a lot of times.
It happens to Magic a lot, yeah.
It's just like a thing that happens to these kind of card games, especially when you consider like the volume. Like I remember I think it was Matt telling us locally, Matt, one of our local players, that like the reason that centering is bad on cards is because they are printing so many at a time and they're not like sharpening the knives and like carefully like lining up the sheets or whatever. It's just like,
I'm sure it's not knives, but like whatever.
Whatever is like guillotine,
pizza rollers. I'm imagining.
Yeah, paper cutter type things. Yeah, it's like if centering was like a high priority, then they could try to make it happen. But that's really just like a side effect. It's a thing that maybe 0.1% of people even ever think about, let alone care about. And I feel like super specific collation and distribution is kind of similar, where like,
right. Yeah. So I just think that it's a microcosm of the way people behave in any setting. And card games are so low stakes. It's not politics,
Sure.
I mean, there are political and economic influences on card games, but it doesn't really matter.
It's a hobby.
Play the game or don't. It's fine.
Yeah. I guess you could argue if they have a tournament right after a set comes out, then that means it's like harder to get the cards for. That's like the one situation where you could be
it's just pretty
somebody needs.
I just find it disappointing. It's disappoint. I get disappointed in people for just being so quick to react.
Yeah.
For feeling like everything. If something doesn't go exactly correct, their reaction is to complain and yell about it on Twitter or make videos to like get clicks about like LSS fucked up. And that's the thing is like a lot of Flesh and Blood Twitter is more actually just like content creators.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not even. I mean, lots of players too, but I just feel like the main thrust of the conversation online is driven by content creators.
And it's like a two-way cycle too, where it's like if something like just random players who aren't making YouTube videos can tweet about it, and then the people who do make YouTube videos are like, oh yeah, this is the conversation on Twitter.
Right.
And I mean, at least this time it was.
And so you have to address it, or people feel like they have,
LSS does, yeah, because it's like, oh, it's an issue.
Right, because people are talking about it. So, and now the new thing is, I'm sure I'm missing one, But
oh, like about outsiders.
the new thing is pack collation, where the Japanese and the Belgium is different, and people were counting on, or certain people who believe that they're owed the way sets are supposed to be, is because in the past you've been able to tell in draft generally what's been picked. Kind of.
I think in like Uprising, I don't know how it's worked for every set, but I think Uprising was pretty strict on this, that it was like 2, 2, and 1 of the class cards. It'd be like 2 illusionist, 2 ninja, and then 1 wizard or something like that. I forget if that's
and
the number.
I think 3 generic.
Yeah. So you could
2,
look
2, and 1, and then
so every pack was like that.
And then 2 rares and 1 shiny, and then 2 tokens.
Yeah.
And so
that was actually a thing. People complained about this at Worlds, because you remember how at like big tournaments they don't give you packs. I think specifically for Uprising, because it has the dragons, and those like are giving away that you're drafting them. So they like swapped out the dragons, put in other cards. Apparently, I don't even know if this is like was confirmed by anything, but like people's assumptions. But people were like, well, they mixed up the packs. They didn't take them from one box. It was all mixed up.
I think they said they didn't do that.
Yeah, they like specifically said they didn't.
I think so.
Yeah, because
I may have. I think they said there may have been mistakes, but generally we tried to just take the packs out and put them in.
Yeah, because it's like I don't actually know. Like, was there enough of a pattern in terms of like what's in a box to be like I can tell that this has half from one box, half from another box?
Oh no, I doubt it.
Like, it's hard to imagine, but it's like also that's a very like minor. I don't know.
Anyway, this is the thing that we're talking about, something that we're not playing in the Pro Tour. We're going to Baltimore. We're content creators.
Yeah. You're watching it.
You know, we're here making the content, but it's like, I don't give a shit. Like, why would I care? Who cares about this stuff? It's like 3 guys.
Yeah. I mean, people who I would consider like competitive players, like people who have won Battle Hardens are tweeting about it. It's like sort of split, where some people are like, you know, because LSS's take about it, it was a pretty quick article. Like, they clearly didn't feel like it was a big enough deal to like go into detail. They were basically like, we're gonna have a mix, so you won't know whether it's Belgian or Japanese. And I think they're clearly just trying to make it like the most even playing field possible. Where if they were like, it's gonna be Belgian, and then people without access to Belgian can't practice.
Yeah,
and vice versa.
Brian Gottlieb explained pretty, I think, well, that it's like, if we said it was going to be one or the other at this hour, like people, if we would be seen as, you know, giving advantage to people who have a lot of money and a lot of time to, like, there's no good way to do this. Like, and I just feel like the most interesting reaction I've heard to this conversation, this discourse or whatever, is that like no one in Magic has promised this.
Yeah,
like
I think it's like happened sometimes. It's like
a new thing.
It seems like kind of new. Yeah,
people thought about in Flesh and Blood that were like, oh, the pack distribution is the same. Like if LSS like wanted to mix it up and just like, oh, there is no pack distribution. L's can be anywhere. R's can be anywhere.
Yeah, you
know, I bet it's mostly a manufacturing thing. That it's like because Flesh and Blood isn't, you know, 5 colors. It's like only a certain amount of classes. It's like gonna be this way, and you have to do the sheets a certain way. So so it's like there's gonna be this many generics just so like everything is even.
Yeah, maybe like just the number of generics in a set, and then how many they're trying to print versus class cards, and then it's like there's physical material realities that like dictate this, and it's not always easy to make that like line up smoothly. And it's possible that this was just, I don't know, maybe they were like, shit, we made like 1 too many rare sheets or something at the, I don't know. It's just anything could have happened, that they were like, I just toss extra rares in some packs.
I think it's supposed to be mixed up. Like they wanted outsiders to be different, where Brian Gottlieb said like some packs have 3 rares, some packs have 0 rares. Yeah. Like we just wanted it to be mixed up and different.
Which I think makes sense, because it's like, I don't know, because like in that article, their advice was basically like focus on the fundamentals, and some people's response was like, isn't knowing what's in a pack fundamental to draft?
No.
And other people were like, I'm just going to take the best card in the pack. Like, I feel like the fundamentals are knowing what the good cards are, knowing what cards each like hero might want, and then recognizing if those cards are available or not. You don't have to know like exactly what your opponent's, not opponent, but like person to your right's pack looked like. I mean, you can see 13 out of the 14 cards that were in it.
You will get the gist eventually if you're being cut. Like,
Yeah, you'll see the gist. You don't have to know exactly what happened.
Also, like, the Outsiders is just so different than any...
Completely, yeah.
Is so different than any draft set they've made. It's made me like draft.
Yeah, it's very cool.
In a way that I hadn't before.
Uprising was a bad intro, yeah.
I did not like Uprising as an intro. It was too predestined.
Mm-hmm.
You just immediately, you're kind of shoved into whatever hero. It's like
usually
you got to pick something.
Yeah.
Yeah, often well, I
Not
was always kind of feeling shoved into Icelander because she has so many more cards because
also
to
some
counteract Draconic.
Yeah.
So I always felt like there was way more Icelander blues around. So
or
I'd
like
just be like
yellows or
them.
whatever. Yeah, I don't, like, it was weird too because it sort of felt like Icelander and Dromai had these like really sort of like greedy deck building restraints where it's like if the box just had a lot of like yellow Icelander cards, it would feel really weak because it's like you can't use your hero ability, you can't play reds, it's like awkward to build the deck. Same with Dromai. And then Fi, it was just like take attacks and the deck is good and it's really I like how this set is like a balance where each hero has like a bit of a complicated set of things that they can do.
You really can just like take one class stuff for a couple picks and then pivot and it feels fine. Like
you can start taking a lot of generics. You can
take like 4 or 5 like unplayable cards and like have a pretty decent deck. And win games.
I feel like I've like taken a class card or two, started being unsure about the signals and whether that class was open, so then I took some generics to like get a read on things. I think this is a draft where I pivoted into Katsu, where like I saw some ninja cards coming and I was like, well, I was trying to be assassin, but maybe ninja is available, and then at a certain point I was like, okay, ninja is definitely available, I'm pivoting. And so it's like, it can't mean you miss out on some picks, but it still turned out fine and I had a pretty decent deck.
I guess my main thing is just like they're designing the game the way they want it to be played. And it's like, okay, if they put a challenge in your way, don't cry about it like a baby.
Yeah.
Like, just play the game.
Yeah, just like accept that there's some variance. I mean,
it's draft.
It's a box of cards and then 8 random people and then random seats. Like, it's very, very out of your control what happens. And I think people
do think like, I think it's totally disingenuous to be like, they were rude to tell me to focus on the fundamentals. Like, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe they even apologized for that. Like, you get to go on Twitter and like scream and cry and make jokes and memes and stuff, and then they're like have a little bit of a tone and you're like, how dare you?
How would you say that?
We demand professionalism from this tiny card game company that has 30 people working for it. It's like, shut up.
It seems like maybe it seems like maybe it wasn't intentional that the different regions were different. And I mean, it seems pretty hard to get like the exact same product out of 2 like wildly different factories. We were just commenting on this because you opened a box of Japanese print and it's like the box feels different, the cards feel different, they have this more like matte,
it's a really different
like smooth feel
experience.
I don't know. So I think their ideal situation will be like one factory can make their boxes in one way and make everything sync up how they want it to sync up. Hello, kitty. But there's slight hiccups that happen and I really don't see how it's gonna like ruin draft. I don't know. I feel like I've seen some people saying like really dramatic things about it, that it could like ruin the competitive integrity of like a Pro Tour draft or something. And it's like, I don't really see how. Is it like,
calm down.
If your pack is missing a Katsu rare that was supposed to be there, and then you were banking on playing Katsu, and then you're like, I would have won the third round of that draft if I'd had this Katsu rare in my deck, which I would have been guaranteed by what the coalition said it should have been like, but then I didn't get it, and then I got hosed, so now I have one. It's like, is that what people are saying? They're just like, they're going to blame a loss on like a card not being there that they expected to?
I get that people are competitive, especially people at this level, but it's just like...
I mean, they're traveling a long way to be there sometimes.
Yeah, but to play a game that has variance in it, like, it's not like... this is the thing. It's like poker has the same kind of shit. You know? People just like... they change a tiny thing. They don't change the packs as much or less or more or whatever.
The packs, like the packs of playing cards?
Because you have to shuffle them every time.
Right. And they use machines, right? Like there's not a dealer shuffling them anymore?
the chips change, like the weighting, like like little things will change in the World Series of Poker, and like professional
the chips
millionaire adults will just like cry on Twitter. So it's not anything new.
For sure.
But it is just disappointing that it's like a small fun game where people are trying to fit, like this is a like people are acting like this is a legacy, that they're being like a tradition, a 20-year tradition that they're being slapped in the face with.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a brand new game figuring out how they want to do like certain things, and it's like, just roll with it.
They're changing something.
On.
Yeah.
You're a good player, you will be fine.
Take the good cards.
Take the good cards.
Yeah.
Pokemoki said that.
Yeah, Pokemoki. Yeah, I think in fighting games, or maybe specifically in Smash, people call this kind of stuff Johns, like an excuse for
Johns?
Yeah.
Like Jawn?
Like just the name Johns. I think it just came from like a guy.
Like my friend Johns?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it just came from a guy whose name was John, and he would like it would just like, if he lost or like fucked up or something, would like have some kind of excuse, and people would be like, no Johns. Like, don't be giving me some reason to like explain away why you lost. And that's what I think. I don't remember who said this, so I'm sorry. Feel free to come forward and claim credit. But someone said
Leave
on Twitter,
a comment in the comments.
Yeah. Subscribe to us on YouTube and PayPal us $20 and tell us it was your. No, don't do that. Just leave a comment.
Do not PayPal me.
Yeah, they were just saying like it feels like people finding excuses for Johns in like the draft format or at the Pro Tour or whatever. We're like, well, our packs were fucked up, so it ruined. It was like a scuffed draft. The draft got ruined. It was terrible or whatever. It's not my fault.
Yeah, and it's like, whatever. Do what you want. Just don't. I feel very protective of LSS. Like no one has actually criticized this podcast for like simping for LSS or whatever.
It does feel weird to like defend a company from its customers.
They're an independent, tiny team.
I know.
Of people making one of the best games that has ever existed, and like just crying to them. I would feel really bad. If I worked there.
Yeah.
And like this is the kind of community I was fostering, I'd be like, we're doing something wrong.
I mean, it's a tiny portion of it. Like most of it is just like a ton of passion and excitement for the cards and the heroes and the decks and stuff. But it's true that kind of stuff stands out. It's
I'm just saying I would want to nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
Like I would want to just be like, this is inappropriate. Like
it did feel like that's what they were trying. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. We're trying to make a game that's fun and competitive. You know, we can't explain to you every little thing about production.
Right.
And you don't know anything about production and setting up a fucking international tournament circuit.
Yeah.
We're running into a lot of issues that we're solving in the best way we can. Give us a couple years to like make it run without any squeaky wheels.
Yeah.
Like with no grinding of the gears. Like
yeah, because it kind of felt like they were
calm down.
They were trying to nip the whole conversation in the bud with that article, because it was a pretty quick article, and at some point in it they said like, we won't be discussing this further. So they were basically it was like a parent being like, hey, look, this is how it's gonna go. Your sister gets this much ice cream, you get this much ice cream. We're not talking about this anymore.
Yeah, I will turn this car around.
Yeah,
and I think that sometimes that needs to be the stance they take. It's just like, no, I don't care how big your podcast is.
Yeah, here's the information
Shut
about
up.
it. Like, that's the information. Don't worry about it. It's not really a big deal. You can figure it out. Everyone's on the same playing field.
Do not attempt to bully us into like making the game the way you want to make it. That's so weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, like they've been really good about like getting the, you know, taking criticism and ideas and lacing them into the game and making it a really interesting experience for everybody. I find that distasteful.
To be that like rude and like put off. Yeah, I guess it almost has like Karen energy. It's like you're at a coffee shop and you're just like berating some 20-year-old barista, and you're like, I went to Italy and I've tasted a latte, and what is this? And it's like, they never said it was like the latte you were expecting. Right. They said, here's a latte. Yeah,
this is the thing. It's distasteful in a way that's like, yes, exactly, complaining about a product that you like. It's just like,
It's
okay.
Did they ever say, by the
they,
way, every box will have perfect class collation to make it easy for you pros to draft?
That
we
was
promise.
not in the rules.
It's not a thing they promised or anything.
It's just a thing that used to exist, and it seems like they're trying to not make exist as much.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, like I think it makes the draft experience much less interesting.
If it's
like,
super on rails, yeah.
If you can just be like, I know what the person to my right and left are doing, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make the best thing. I just find it like,
yeah,
I don't think that's the intention of draft.
For sure. Yeah, I remember like the way people talked about.
I mean, again, I don't know anything about Magic. I'm not a professional level player, but like it doesn't feel like that's something that people should have been used to.
Yeah, I think especially for, I don't know, I didn't follow the like whole scene of Tales of Aria draft because that was before we really joined the podcast, not joined the podcast, joined this game.
Right.
So like I've never gone back and listened to like, I don't know, Arsenal Pass breaking down like here's the collation, here's how you send signals if you're taking Oldham or whatever. But like in Uprising it was kind of important because like if you got cut out of a class and you didn't realize you were going to be cut, then you were like really screwed and it was hard to pivot into something else, and then you'd like screw people over down the line and have like, you know, if you had like 3 Icelanders in a row for some reason and everyone was just like on rails and had to be locked in. It's like the idea of sending a signal was like, okay, people will know the collation. I'll take 1 wizard card. They'll see 2 ninja cards. They'll go, ooh, ninja. They'll take those cards.
Andy did that to me yesterday.
Oh yeah, and then baited you?
He baited me into taking ranger cards and then cut me off of ranger. Very rude.
Michael Feng did that to me once, but did not cut me off. He like purposely sent heavy Icelander signals, and I went, ooh, Icelander, and took them.
Right.
And then it worked out how he wanted it to.
Right.
But that's sort of like...
And I do get, let me be clear.
Yeah.
I do get that type of manipulation, or there's the meta textual like strategy. I get how that's interesting to people, and in sets where that has been a ability to learn, that's interesting, but I don't think it's necessary.
There's just always going to be some kind of like meta consideration, no matter what the collation of the packs is like, or like how random it is. I mean, I guess it's like it means if there can be 2 amazing cards in a pack when you open it, and then you're like, oh, there's still an amazing card here, whatever, red Surging Strike, maybe like red Peace of Mind if people start considering that a really good card, and then you're like, what'd they take? A Majestic, armor, like, I don't know. There's always some element of randomness where it's like Majestics pop up in some packs or legendaries and people take those. And then it's like people don't normally care about like the rainbow foil common if it's like not a good card. So if you're like, wait, there's no foil, was it a good card? Was it a legendary? There's a lot of situations where you really don't get much in terms of signals from a pack and you have to like figure it out.
Sure.
And that's just what these packs are going to be like.
All right, enough about this.
All right.
I think
we said what we said.
We said what we said. I mean, my main point is like, I don't really give a shit about draft and like professional level draft because I don't play it, and it's not really my problem to have a conversation about.
Yeah, I mean,
my main thing is, and I don't mean to like tone police or anything here, but it's like, cut them some slack, you know, like they're
if you disagree, be polite at least. Like voice your concerns in a way that like doesn't make the fans of the game look bad.
Unless it's something immoral, like if we're talking about
For
like
sure,
something disgusting or immoral, which game companies are not. You know, they're union busting, they're you know, using child labor or whatever, you know, like whatever. There's lots of bad things.
Blizzard, like insanely abusive workplaces, sexist, misogynistic.
There's lots of bad things you can do as a company.
Yeah.
But if someone is just making a game decision that you don't think don't act like it's the same.
Yeah. I mean, I can just like there's a lot of money on the line, so
you're getting
like
too mad online.
Be polite and about your concern, like because there's $50,000 at stake in theory, if you win the Pro Tour.
If you win the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that Outsiders has brought is a lot of conversation, and I think we've all talked about this. Like, as the game is going to get bigger, Outsiders is a big deal. I think a lot of people, you know, Japan and Brazil are now like entering the arena.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more. You know, the game is growing, pretty concretely. And so there's going to be more people complaining. There's going to be more psychos. There's going to be all kinds of different things that will be lame. And the community will not be a tight-knit, cute community forever.
Sure, yeah, I was gonna say, like, at a certain point it maybe gets big enough that, like, it's hard to, like, weed out that kind of attitude. I would hope that it always stays a community that, like, is very welcoming to new people, because I've heard that about, like, compared to other, like, super established games like Magic, where it's just, like, Magic has sort of all these, like, pretty sexist, like, nerd bro types kind of, like, baked into it. That's just what I've heard in comparison to stuff like Flesh and Blood, where it's like there's women who play Magic, there's women who play Flesh and Blood, but it's like Flesh and Blood is new enough that there's not sort of, like, I don't know, I feel like Magic just has, like, grumpy gatekeepers who are, like, have been playing for 20 years and, like, want to get annoyed at anyone new who's playing, and Flesh and Blood is, like, new enough that everyone remembers being a new player and, like, wants to welcome in the new players in a way that they were welcomed in. And I just hope
sort
that
of it's
continues.
Interesting, like, there's been I definitely, whenever I see people playing a card game, I'm always surprised that they don't want to tell me about it.
Like when you walk by,
I'm always like, oh, what are you guys playing? They're like, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, whatever. And like, they're not interested in being like, oh, you don't know how to play this game? Do you want to learn? Or, you know, they're not interested in being like, oh, I'll tell you some information about it or how to get into it. No.
Yeah. I mean, I was hanging out with Avril Lavigne last week, and she was really interested in talking about Battle Spirits
Really?
Saga. Yeah. She had a lot to say about it. She really liked the decks she'd built.
What is it like?
I don't know. There's, like, spirits, and I don't know. I don't really remember. But I don't know. I'm just saying, some people are really, you know, they'll tell you about it.
They'll tell you
They'll
about
tweet
it.
about it. They'll pose with the cards.
But I also find that with Flesh and Blood, you know, there will be people who come into Action City and be like, what are you playing? And then people kind of, besides me, aren't like, hey, it's called Flesh and Blood. We have stuff for sale. Like, you know, like...
Tony, too. Tony will do that.
Tony will do that, and I will do that. Everyone else is sort of just like, it's a game. Yeah, we're closed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people don't want to talk to people in real life, and I find that very odd, considering how social the game is. But I do think generally Flesh and Blood is very welcoming. It actually reminds me, Pitch Perfect, lovely podcast. Go watch Pitch Perfect if you haven't, with Elaine and Melody. James White went on their show to answer some questions.
Yeah. Awesome.
And they asked him a question about diversity, quote unquote. And James White answered it in a really interesting way that I really appreciated. They asked him, like, how do you get more people into your game? And
like diverse kinds of people interested in the game.
Yeah. And, you know, he was saying that he felt that they were doing a good job. Like, after, you know, 20, 30 years working in card games and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, like, you go walk around the Pro Tour, there's a lot more women and people of color at a calling than these other games. Maybe not Yu-Gi-Oh, but I mean, like, definitely more women, maybe. But
yeah, probably. Or, like, on the judge team too, that it's like, it's not like just a boys club. It's definitely very skewed towards men, and there's, like, I'm sure a lot of reasons that, like, these kind of hobbies end up dominated by men.
But I think what's interesting is that he was also saying, like, it's not just about representation of, like, you know, I was noticed the Metal Fab Tokens guys made a dice of the women of Wraith.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wait, where's Uzuri? And I was like, wait, where's... And then I, like, looking at how many women there are in the game, and there was, like, 10 more if you count Data Doll. After, so it's like 16 women heroes.
I think Data Doll's they, them.
she's you call her they, them?
I don't know. I don't know. Have they
I
said?
think she's got a she. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Well, whatever. She looks
not
like
for me to say.
She looks like a bitch to me.
If you say so.
That's good.
I've heard a fan theory that Data Doll is, like, supposed to be a copy of Dash, or that she was the original and then Dash actually is a robot.
Right.
That
would be
cool.
weird.
Fembot Dash.
Fembot Dash.
Yeah.
I mean, Arachne is canonically they, them.
Right. Arachne is canonically they, them. That's true. I don't know if Data Doll is, like, canonically, but it could be.
Well, either way, if you don't count Data Doll, it's 9 more. So it's like 15 women and heroes. It's like almost half.
About half the heroes are women.
And then there's only, you know, there's not all of them are quote unquote white. So they have an interesting level of representation that a lot of games don't. They're starting in the 2020s when everyone wants to see representation. But what he said that impressed me more than, like, well, we have representation and there's a long way to go. It's also like the different kinds of people who play it might not want a competitive 1v1 game. And he was saying like we want to have PvE so more different types of people want to play it, and I think that is indicative of an understanding that like class and culture defines the kinds of things you're into, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just be like, look, women do this incredibly male coded thing because we have women in it.
Right. Yeah.
That's not how it works. Like,
or like, look, poor person, like play this super expensive tournament game.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Not that it's like insanely expensive, but it's like if you're poor, it is.
But any TCG is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, to a poor person.
Yeah.
Like to a person who doesn't, who's living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, it's like if the idea of paying like a cable bill is really expensive to you,
is stressful.
Like going out to dinner, it's like you're not going to spend money on cards that you can't eat.
Right, exactly, and that you can't eat or live in.
Yeah, like do anything with other than have fun.
And I mean, that's a lot of this country,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically a lot of brown people in this country. Hispanic and black people,
Mm-hmm.
like are far more often in lower income brackets, and so you have a higher barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to be like, well, if you have a PvE, it's not just about getting the types of people who are just like less competitive. It's also about having less people with less money who don't need to make such a busted deck to compete.
Yeah.
You could join a party with other people who have more stuff or lend stuff. It's less.
They could just make you a deck and give it to you and be like, play. We need someone to play this because we need this many people.
You
and
can
then it's
be
like
the merchant, or you can be the guardian. You can
for
be,
sure.
You can. We can have. It can be board gamey.
You could also just proxy whatever legendaries you want. If it's like, I'm curious if there'll be elements, because we talked about this. Like, is PvE going to be a purely like kitchen table kind of thing where you're just supposed to like play it at home?
Well, nobody knows.
Yeah,
But I mean, like,
I really,
me personally, I hope that whatever it is, it's able to be played at a higher level. Like, I would like to go to a calling or a pro tour and like have at least side events of like,
for sure. Yeah.
Get a team of 5 and like do the best.
Take on this challenge. Yeah.
Beat it the fastest or with the, the most points or whatever. I don't know how it would work, but
yeah, I mean, I love the idea of like doing some kind of thing where you're the owner or like tournament organizer of your LGS, like plays the boss deck, and then there's like
that's how I've been thinking about it.
There's
but
like chests that are prize packs or whatever. So maybe like I don't know if they can make.
It might not be a boss. Maybe there's like a DM.
Like a dungeon you go through. Yeah.
But James White has specified the most we've gotten from it is that there is a party. It's RPG like, and it's like a campaign.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. And he mentioned on the Pitch Perfect podcast that it's like Flesh and Blood is very RPG style.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
In its game, and it's like it is.
Because you equip the armor and weapons and stuff.
You equip weapons and armor. You look all different, you know.
You have a role where it's like a warrior is going to be, and guardian is tanky, and like a ninja isn't tanky. So as soon as you just like choose that hero, it's like you can't really have a team of all ninjas.
You can be an assassin. Yeah. You can be a ranger. You know, it's there's a lot of things that can happen with the system, and I think that what they want is not just to open up the diversity of like of people who are competitive and people who aren't, but I think also people who have different levels of time and money and investment, and that also scales on identity, and honestly is more important than what you might, because you can't make a monolith of like black women are interested in this, like, and that's what companies really often get wrong.
Sure.
With making diversity is like everybody just wants what we have. We just have to make it look cool to these types of people. Yeah. And then they don't know anything because nobody, there's none of that kind of person in the company. So I thought it was really interesting, and I thought made it seem like he had a really firm grasp on like what gets people into your game. Yeah,
I could even see it as a way that like eventually gets people into the competitive side, where it's sort of like a shallow end of the pool, because it really is like getting into Flesh and Blood when we started, and I probably even more so now, it like can kind of feel like jumping into a deep end, depending on how you start. It was like, you know, our local scene is kind of feels like a Shark Tank sometimes, where it's like you show up and you get like calling winning players. You get people who've won battle hardens or top 8'd battle hardens. Their deck is all legendaries, and you have like your little precon.
Cold foils.
Yeah, they got cold foils.
They
got tournament. They're shuffling an eye in their deck or something, and you're like, wow, these people have like what feels like thousands of dollars worth of cards, and I just got this precon deck, and I'm nowhere close. And it's like
mine is 12.
To some people, that is sort of like, I feel like we've met people locally who like tried it at that level, like dipped their toe in and sort of like felt like they were going to drown and then didn't keep coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Some people jump in and are like, wow, this all seems awesome. I feel like that was our experience.
Like us, yeah.
Like we were like, this is confusing, overwhelming. We're not going to win anything, but it's fun. So like, let's see what happens. And you know, there's like all these cards you have to get, and there's all this knowledge you need to acquire about like how to play.
But this is the thing, is that it's like it's you have to if it's that level,
Mm-hmm.
like it is a deep end, because getting into it is kind of letting it take over your life. Like it becomes your hobby.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's like, you have to be in the mood to get into a new hobby. Like you have to be at a place in your life to like do something new every day and make new friends. And you have to be the kind of person who like goes and is comfortable with making, you know, a bunch of new acquaintances and friends.
You got to want to like practice and learn and lose. You got to be ready to like lose a lot.
Yeah, and also eat shit for like weeks.
I mean, months. I still lose all the time. Like
you don't lose.
I lose.
You very rarely lose. When was the last time you did worse than 2-2? Yeah, shut up. So
that Armory where I played Oldham, I only won one game.
Oh, the first time.
I lost 2.
Oh yeah, and then the second time, what happened? 4-up.
No, I'm talking about in CC.
Oh yeah.
In Blitz, my win record with Oldham is pretty good. Also, when I played Icelander in CC, I've gone like 1-2 or 1. I think I've gone 1-2 twice.
Really?
When I've tried playing like tricky and good meta decks, I like do pretty well, but not quite enough to close out games. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't practice them. You just make them and then take them once, and then the next time you bring them, you win the armory.
That's me trying them out at an armory. That's the point of an armory, is to like try out a deck and like get a feel for it a little bit.
You could play on Talishar and probably cut down on that loss.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting thing to get into. And not everybody's going to do that, but making PvE something you can do once and be like, hey, I had a fun time with that.
Yeah.
With no barrier to entry.
You can decide.
I played it with my regular friends at the kitchen table. Maybe I want to go and buy a little bit of it for myself. And then and if you can transfer those decks to competitive, then we're talking. Then we're talking
for sure
going crazy.
And and then if you can reach a point where someone like feels like they are a Flesh and Blood player, even though they only play PvE, and they're like, oh yeah, I have a Genis deck and I play on like teams with people, and it's like a social thing, and you know, I can see a lot of people are probably into both. Like they like playing in armories. Maybe.
Dude, I would love it.
It'd be great. Yeah.
I mean, I would love PvE. That's honestly, I think I would play it more.
Interesting. I feel like we can probably get some of our friends who don't.
It depends on
play
what
it already.
But in my mind, the great game that it is, yeah. I mean, I know I have definitely a lot of friends who are like, I don't want to fight. I want to play together. And like, there's definitely a lot of people who play games that way.
Or like people who
board games.
Like even if you have 2 decks and you're like, all right, I've got Dorinthia and Bravo, CC, both all meta and like have all the good cards and like let's play each other. If you just hand your friend either one and are like, okay, here's how you play. You're gonna have to like look at their hand and show them how stuff works, or have someone looking over their shoulder.
It's not easy to teach people, even with the decks that are built to teach people.
Yeah, and it's like if you're doing that, then it's like it's sort of not that it's like ruins the experience, but it's like hard to get the experience of like playing poker in the way that like a matchup like that would be, where if you're Dorinthia, you want to like keep information hidden and like versus if you're like, okay, you play Dory, I'll be Bravo, we'll also have a Dash and a Genis and we're gonna team up. You can just look at someone's hand and be like, oh yeah, play this here, that'll be good. Right. And it works better.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of games want to be like easy to learn, hard to master.
Sure.
This game is not easy to learn. It's pretty like they'll say like, oh, the rules are pretty simple. They're not.
It's easy to learn like the basic version of the rules.
If you have already been steeped in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah, probably. If you're me, it took me like months
Yeah.
to like learn the basic rules.
Yeah.
Like it's just not easy to learn, and that's okay.
And it's like,
It's
when
a
did
great
we actually
game.
when did we actually learn how instants really worked? I feel like I didn't understand that till I learned Kano. You know, like priority. And
I feel like we didn't. I mean, lots of people still don't know how reactions work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, when do they resolve?
They know like a shortcut version of them, or the rules changed too. Like after we joined is when like the 2.0 version of the rules where they changed a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I think Outsiders has been great for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the draft is probably one of the most interesting ways to get in. Like, you can pay $10.
Mm-hmm.
You can open 3 packs and play a bunch of games. I mean, like, all you need to tell someone is, like, pick whatever you see the most borders of, and then you'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to know what the cards do.
Yeah.
You know, some very basic, like, these are the ones that anyone can play. This is the arrow. This is the ranger. This is the ninja. This is the assassin. Pick one.
Yeah, yeah.
And then just like
take the cards and play.
Matchy.
And it's like if people are nice, they'll probably stomp you, and then they could play again and be like, oh yeah, you like this was a play mistake you made. This was like a card picking mistake. You shouldn't have taken this many copies of this card.
I don't think you need to play that many times to like do well.
It's easy to learn a lesson by losing, I think, and that's like the thing that. I think some people have trouble with that attitude. Like they don't want to lose even if they're new at a game, and they just want to be able to win. Right. But it's like you play in a draft and you're like, wow, with 3 stealth cards, my Uzuri deck doesn't do anything. I should have gotten more.
So in this wrap up of what Outsiders has done to the game, how's the meta?
Well, they printed the most broken card of all time, and they have to ban it immediately.
It's a 0 for 15.
0 for 30. It kills your opponent for 40 life.
It's 0 for 15 with Go Again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they would print something that says 0 for 15 on it.
Yeah. Dominate. No D
that
reacts.
Doesn't say dominate.
0 for 15. It's always that much value. So the meta is... it is funny because it's like... You can look back. Like I remember we had this conversation, and I was basically like, "Well, every set they print heroes that like become a part of the meta. So probably what's going to happen in Outsiders, right?" And you were like, "Yeah, of course. You think they're going to print cards? You think Azalea isn't going to be the business?" And I feel like a lot of people remember, like after Dynasty, they did some bans where they were like, "The meta's a little stale. We want to ban some stuff from Icelander," and people were like, "Well, I bet this is because they're worried that Outsiders won't make an impact. It's not high power enough." And it's like, that is not how card games work, my friend. They print new cards because they're going to be good. They're going to make those heroes good, and you're going to want the cards to play those decks.
Well, design-wise, I think Outsiders is really interesting in that Flesh and Blood has been really careful to not quote-unquote power creep, and it's caused a lot of interesting discussion, I think, about what power creep is. Like, they are not going to print a 0 for 5 Go Again.
Right. That would never happen.
They're not going to do it because... That's not how they would that would be power creep in a way that would just be like, oh, well, you only play that card. Everyone needs to play that card. Or
even if it didn't block,
here.
Which is like one reason I think the like rule of 8 doesn't really make much sense. Of like, cards should add up to 8. Like,
why don't you describe what rule of 8 is to the people who don't know?
There's a theory that like the math of like how you determine the value of a Flesh and Blood card is like if you look at Wounding Blow, it's at red, it's a 0 for 4 and it blocks 3. So it deals 4 damage, it blocks for 3, that's 7, and then it pitches for 1, so that's 8. And then it doesn't cost anything to play.
Okay.
So that's 8.
Right.
So then Critical Strike costs 1, and then that...
5.
5. So it's like it adds up to 9, but it's -1 because of the cost to pitch it. But then it's like, as soon as you get to defense reactions, it's like, I guess Sink Below, the effect of blocking, the Sink effect, and the fact that it's a D-react is like worth 3. Or something. I don't know.
So everyone's trying to come up with some rubric for like everything is just on a spreadsheet, and I can weigh the concept of being unsure as valued at 4 or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Shut up.
Well, because it's like if you took Wounding Blow and were like, now it's a 0 for 5 that blocks 2, that would not be the same card, even though it would add up to 8. If you made it a 0 for 6 that blocked 1, that would be insane. And if it was a 0 for 7 that didn't block at all, it would be busted beyond belief.
Right.
And that would still add up to 8. So I don't think it makes much sense. Anyway,
right. Kudos to the kinds of people who have that kind of brain who like need to know
Sure.
like what the design philosophy is.
It's like a rule of thumb, but it's not. I don't know.
Sure, there is some sort of like rubric around the card design of being like, if it hits for this much power, it's red. If it's a cycle, if it's a non-attack action, it probably only blocks 2.
Right.
Like, and if it does, maybe it's really powerful.
Or it's in a certain class, like warrior or guardian.
If it's a non-attack action that blocks 3 and it does something really cool, then maybe you can consider that very powerful. Why don't you try it?
Maybe it's melting point. Yeah.
Right. But, people trying to assign value to Codex of Frailty as saying like, oh, it's a 0 for 10. I just find that really silly. And I think
it's like trying to assign that to Art of War. It's like sometimes Art of War is worth 0. Like it depends on the hand and the deck and how you
sometimes it's a 1 for 8. Or whatever, you're drawing 2 cards and then you're playing a whole hand of 5, so you get 20 value. I don't know, like
sure, yeah.
It's very silly to try and be like, this is what everything is valued concretely. But I think that Outsiders is interesting in that, like I said, like I don't know if I said this before or only said it on Twitter or whatever, but like every time a set comes out, people think it sucks. Everything is underpowered. and then immediately there's somebody figures something out, and then that needs to be banned.
There's always very polarized reactions where it's like they're like, oh, this hero is busted, and then maybe they like for 5 they had to ban Stubby Hammers and like bring down his power level, and then everyone
they did that
dropped
before
it
the set came out
in Blitz, not in CC.
I know.
Yeah. Right, they banned it in Blitz, and people were like, okay, so I guess it's pretty good in CC. And then once they banned it in CC, everyone's like, oh, well, I'm gonna drop this deck. I'm not gonna.
People were off 5.
They just go up and down like on certain decks, and
people are very reactive and very trusting of people who have done well at any point.
Yeah.
Like if you were in the top 8 of a Pro Tour or Calling or a Nationals or a Worlds, like you are now some sort of like scientist.
Yeah.
If your opinion of a card is that it's bad or a hero, that it's not very good, people will just be off of it, like without trying it themselves.
Yeah.
Without any sort of testing. Without not knowing how it feels, not knowing how to play against it. Like lots of people would just be like, oh, I heard it was bad. Yeah. And it's like, well, maybe give it a shot, or maybe don't. Like, I don't know. People are very confident in their evaluations or repeating shit that they heard because Michael Hamilton said it, or because Matt Folk said it, or whoever.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I was just listening to one of the most recent Manor podcast episodes, and this isn't meant to be like a dig at Michael and Roger by any means.
We love Roger. We love Michael.
They're very smart boys.
Beautiful boys.
Very nice boys.
Great content. Good players.
I just
no diss at all.
Yes, absolutely no diss.
But
what if I was about to say like the meanest shit about them of all time, and you were like, "Wait, Chris, that is a diss. Edit this out." No. They were just talking about deck lists from some recent events, like the brawl in Chicago, the Min-Max Games Realm Brawl, and also the there was an AGE Open Arcane Games and Events in California.
Yeah,
had like a Kano in the top 4 or something. And they were like, I think Roger was like, oh yeah, there's some Kanos popping up lately at events, and Michael was like, yeah, kind of out of nowhere. And I thought it was interesting because it's like, well, where out of would Kano have come? It's like, I guess maybe he meant like if they printed some new cards that were like, hey, this is great in Kano, let's play Kano. Right. But there's just some decks. Kano is like maybe the best example where it's like it's never super represented at tournaments because it's like the hardest deck to play.
It's insanely difficult to play and learn.
Pretty arguably the hardest deck to play, right? I don't know what's harder.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's pretty hard. And also very finicky and can die to a lot of counterplay.
And there have been decks that if they show up with the thing they have, you will lose to them. Like there's no way you can win. Like almost like you'd have to
like Dromai
extremely high roll to Prism. I don't feel is as good.
Yeah, but Dromai, in CC probably.
Dromai has a card that if she plays it, unless you brought Dampen in your deck specifically for it, you are not winning the game. Like you've lost. It's over now, and that really sucks.
Yeah.
So there's like hard counters to Kano, But then it's like, well, if nobody's playing this, also people like Dromai sometimes just doesn't run Thamai.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like if they don't expect a ton of Wizard, it's not like very good against other decks. Yeah,
Right.
I think this is like what's interesting
It's
is that
very good against Riptide. I found out.
oh yeah,
because you can't
True.
play defense
No,
reactions.
you can't play defense reactions.
What the
Those are
fuck?
cards. Yeah, it's pretty rude. Yeah, I think it's like this is a good example of what you were saying, that people like treat people like scientists, or they like sort of treat the kind of analysis of like the meta as a science. And I feel like the thing is that certain players like Michael Hamilton, or I feel like we sort of noticed that like Nathan from the Card Guys would do this. I feel like certain players are like, they're so analytical at looking at a meta, and so like they've gotten good at sort of like taking their emotions and their personal biases out of the equation to some extent, and being like, okay, looking at the matchups, the numbers, whatever you want to look at, which deck beats what other decks, which one has the best spread. You look at that, and that's how you pick a deck. And most people don't do that, even really good players. It's like, to some extent, you know, it's like
Yeah.
Michael Hamilton loves Icelander, so it's like I don't know what percentage, I'm sure like 80 to 90% of the reason he brings Icelander to a tournament is like, I think this is the best choice. But it's also like, some of it is that it's like, it's the best choice
It's comfort.
for me.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I like playing the deck, and I feel like that's an argument for why like people like Hayden and Brendan will bring Kano. It's like, they like playing Kano, and they think it has a chance to like attack on a different axes. So it's
And
like,
if they, maybe you're a player that just really wants the highest ceiling possible,
Mhm.
even if the floor is also really high.
yeah, really low, you mean?
No.
Oh.
If the floor was low, then it would be easy.
Oh, you mean highest, like in terms of like difficulty, or
It's like barrier to entry.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Like the
Um,
ceiling of potential play, but the floor of potential play is really hard as well.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess
that's definitely Kano, right? It's like
Yeah.
to be even okay at Kano, you have to be basically amazing at it. Like,
You have to really practice.
because if you fuck up, you're just dead. You're like,
Yeah.
you do Storm Striders at the wrong time or whatever.
But it's interesting. It's just like even people who are in the game like make and think about the game and
Mhm.
and do test
Mhm.
like say really concrete stuff very authoritatively,
Mhm.
and people just buy it.
Yeah.
Like people are just like, Azuri's not good.
Yeah.
Like no real evidence or any real reason.
Mhm.
Like the math doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I also like when people just say
Okay.
stuff. They're like, yeah, Bravo beats Uzuri. And what they mean is like them and their testing team like played it, and they beat their friend on Bravo or whatever, and they're like, yep, or on Uzuri, and they're like, yeah, Bravo wins.
right. And the thing about this game is like everything is crackable.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is makeable in a way that you didn't expect. It just feels like one of the first things that we experienced when we got into the game was the Starvo meta, and then 2 Kanos being in that,
Mm-hmm.
and no one was expecting it.
No, absolutely not.
In that top 8, I should say.
Yeah.
Of the first Pro Tour.
Out of like what, 6 people played Kano in the whole field? Like,
Yeah.
it was basically none. It was at the
And-
levels of like Bolton.
and like, and this is that there was a little bit of drama that came from those teams like lying to each other
Mhm.
and not telling each other what they were going to be on.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
are trying to hide the information that
For
they
sure,
have. So I really don't believe that people who are on teams and some of the best teams are going on their podcast. I mean, Michael and Roger do say that like, hey, we told you we were going to be on Icelander, and then I did, and then I won the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. They basically said what the changes were. They were like, yeah, Red Winter's by it, and Roger was like, I don't like Red Winter's by it. I'm going to run, I forget what he ran. Like, they're very open about what they're going to
Right, but
bring.
but besides them, like, I don't think that most people are going on their podcasts and being like, this is the best deck, everyone should play it
Mhm.
because it's true. Like, it's just like people are going to keep stuff to themselves.
Mhm.
And I think if somebody figures out that they can have no bad matchups with Uzuri or Riptide,
Yeah,
they're not going to tell you about it.
for sure.
They're going to tell you after the Pro Tour when they top 8 it with
Mhm.
Riptide or whatever. And I'm not saying that's true or that I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
possible.
Sometimes teams even like they maybe look to bring a version of a deck, but not like their final brew to stuff like a Battle Hardened or whatever, because that's like public. And like maybe they'll do it right before. Like this is sort of what was happening, I think, with the Lightning Briar list, like back in the Briar meta, when like I think I don't know the lore exactly, but Tarek Patel was one of like the early people to like innovate this deck, and then I think it was played before like UK Nationals or something, and then everyone started playing it there, where it was like before there was nearly as much of like a Twitter like Discord presence for the game. There was like Fabry didn't exist. There weren't as many YouTubes. It was just like harder to like get a deck list. So it was sort of like this thing being passed around like, hey, this is the way you build Briar. It's crazy. Check this out. Like sometimes that just happens because a deck like does well at a tournament or does well at an event or something, and then it's like the rumor of how to make it starts spreading around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it's just like it's interesting to see outsiders have this effect as well, where the meta is now so open. Mm-hmm. People are like, is Oldham good still? Yeah. Is Azuri good, even though she top aided the realm? What do they call that shit? Brawl?
It was a brawl, I think.
That's not a real thing, though. That's what they made up.
It's a realm thing. I think it was at 5K.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, we have so few data points that people are sort of just wildly speculating. Mm-hmm. But I just find it interesting that people are taking those opinions now as those voices have become more solidified as like content creators and spokespeople for the game. Like those opinions become gospel. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So like my opinion is that at the Pro Tour or Calling, you're going to see a lot of Azalea, Lexi, and Dramai.
Yeah.
Not because any of those decks are the best deck, but because everyone online says they are.
Right. Like Azalea and Lexi got, I think you could argue, the best new cards because they got, I mean, we were talking about power creep earlier, and they did arguably
straight up power creep a Ranger by giving them a quiver.
Yeah, new slots, which is a really interesting thing because that's like, I feel like their biggest issues in the past with quote unquote power creep is heroes that were a little overtuned. Like, I think like obvious examples are Chain, Starvo, Pre-Errata, Briar. It's like they printed a hero that was so good that combined. Runeblade also has like really good cards and equipment and stuff too, and Guardian. Yeah. It's like, so it's sort of a combination of like a good card pool and then also a great hero ability and good armor and like all these different things. So it's cool to see what they can do in the other direction when they have a hero with like a decent, I guess a pretty good hero ability and some good equipment and some good cards and just like needs a little bit more to like push past certain bad matchups and like give that to Azalea by being like, you get a crazy power card that feels like Revel and Runeblood on steroids. You get like a free...
Wait, what's that one?
Codex of Frailty.
I don't see how.
I'm just saying like a card that you play and people are like, oh shit, you're playing that card. That's really powerful. Like, yeah, there's not really much to compare. It's kind of hard to compare it to anything because we haven't had graveyard recursion before in this game really, other than like putting it back on top of the deck. Just like going from graveyard to a play zone. It's pretty new. It's cool. Yeah. Getting a quiver, getting like new aim counters, like all these things that like make the arrows and the playstyle better. And it seems to have worked enough that she can like beat her former bad matchup sometimes.
Right. Well, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like she can beat Guardian.
But does that mean it's the best deck? People are excited to play it. Mm-hmm. But that's the problem, is that whatever you think is the best deck, you've got to understand that the field is going to be people who are excited about the new cards, excited about the new heroes, and just want to play it, especially in the Calling, because they think that people aren't going to be as practiced against it, or because it's the most fun or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. So the best deck is going to be whoever is best into what's going to be played.
I think also LSS, like the way they want to balance the game is to avoid having an obvious best deck, because it's like, you know, it might sound sort of obvious to say, but it's like when you have a hero that's broken, like when Starvo still had Awakening, it's like probably Starvo was the best deck. Or when Viserai still had Skeleta, when Chain first came out and had Seeds, like I feel like maybe Chain with Seeds is like the most obvious one, or Pre-Errata Briar. Like we've had a few where it's like this deck is just more powerful than every other deck in pretty obvious ways. Like when Briar could deal more damage than any other deck and then also block for like 8 with a non-attack, with a 0 cost like blue card, that's absurd. No other deck can block for 8 with 1 card or deal 30 damage.
Yeah, I think that was
so that was the best deck.
Yeah.
But even then it's sort of like it always shifts, because if you're like, well, Ice Lexi and Ice Oldham can actually beat that deck. It's like, is Oldham now the best deck because he beats Briar? Or is Briar still the best deck because the power level is just high enough?
It's hard to say.
In a more open meta, the question, it's just always a moving target. The best deck is like what the best player brings that happens to win and get good matchups. And like, you know, it's a game with variance. There's going to be luck in who you play against, who wins the die roll, what cards you draw, how they built their deck, a million things can happen.
Yeah. So point is, Outsiders is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. I love it.
It's a great set.
I also don't be sleeping on those legendaries.
Mm-hmm.
Same discussion is happening with all the legendaries. Everyone thinks they're unplayable and useless.
Oh, yeah. Trench, unplayable.
Trench, unplayable. Shroud, unplayable. Vambrace does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's literally like... Whatever. Point is that they're all really good.
Mm-hmm.
They have actually never made a legendary that isn't really good.
Yeah. Checks out.
Like
Silver Palms blocks 2 on the arms. Dennis can block a little bit.
That's Battle Worn?
No, Blade Break.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, imagine that. Oh, are you ready for this, Sonny?
Well, I mean, just like think about how people valued Ghost Hands and Alluvion.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not Coronet Peak. I think people liked Coronet Peak. But I remember
People were like, "Oh, that's
specifically
pretty
Ghostly Touch was just like, people were like, what is this?
What is this for?
It does nothing.
What is this?
And now it's like very runnable in Dramai.
It's a game plan. It's a win condition.
It's a win condition for like a lot of the best decks.
How much?
Like,
how much armor has a win condition on it?
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
When you said that?
Yeah.
Really think about like. And then like Alluvion, people are like, I guess it's good as a sideboard card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, into like half of the decks that do like everyone that does Arcane.
Yeah, a lot of decks. It's so good that it made decks like Viserai have a horrible time in the meta because Icelander could just like outvalue him so easily. Because it's like,
so easily.
Oh, I'll prevent damage, which then also saves up later to give me more damage.
To give me pitch?
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's cool. Thanks for the free pitch when I'm just like blocking on rate, which
I have to block
I want to do anyway.
No, like I'm always going to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so obvious to me that they make legendaries that do shit that is broken and like stuff you've never been able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, they're usually very unique. That's like sort of the thing that stands out about legendaries is like it'll be like some kind of repeatable effect or some kind of effect that nothing else can really give you access
like
to.
Tunic better.
Yeah,
actually,
Tunic's better. I decided.
And,
Vested the First Fist is better.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
it's just like, don't be so quick to snap on judgment.
It's also
try new stuff.
It's a game with like a long future. Like they're planning for what, I don't even know, 10 years, 15 years. Like James White has a pretty long.
James White is like wants to be dead when it's like over.
Yeah, it's like some of this stuff might not pay off immediately, and that's fine. It's like certain cards like they're. Or it's like it might not pay off. It's like you could argue that's what happened with Ranger. It's like they printed the legendaries, they printed the weapon and the card, and then they were like, oh, Azalea isn't strong enough.
Crosswrap was a $15 card, and people would have laughed at me for saying that they have never made a bad legendary 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Because Skullbone Crosswrap was worth literally like $10.
Yeah. The one we have you bought for like $15, right? And now it's worth
$14 is how much I paid. I think with tax and shipping.
Practically got it off the dollar menu.
Right.
Now it's worth
$100.
And then I
sold a white one just recently for $100.
Store credit to get more Outsiders.
And I think I even got kind of ripped off. You know what I mean? Like it's worth more than that right now. So it's like, even if they're not the best right now, which I think a lot of these cards actually are pretty good.
Sure. Yeah.
I think Shroud and Trench are very good cards. Hang on to them.
Give it time. Yeah.
Don't be crazy. Watch the Tall Timmy. Made a great video about how to get good with making this game a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Beautiful video. Watch that after you finish this because it's almost over. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Bryn. You can follow me at Twitter at Banished Zone. You can follow Chris
at Blue Plunder Run.
At Blue Plunder Run on Twitter.
We have a Discord which you can check out.
Yes, we do. I'm sure it'll be in the description.
Sure. Yeah.
Below this video.
Over there,
follow us if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Write reviews if you're on wherever else, Spotify or.
Do we have any reviews on Apple Podcasts yet? We should.
I don't even know.
Who knows? If we do, show it to us.
Yeah, tell us about it. Yeah. Tweet at us, comment, like, subscribe, all of the things. Hang out with us in the Discord. If you'd like for me to open a box for you live on stream, you can do that by filling out the little form. And until next time, you are banished.
You're banished.